The 13th Marikana Commemorative event is currently underway at the infamous Koppie, where 34 mine workers were gunned down by the police. Speakers from different organizations, lawyers who represented the injured and arrested mine workers, families of those who died, political formations and others are expected to address thousands of those who will be attending the event. For more on the story, we now cross to SABC News reporter Thabiso Moss. Thabiso, there seems to have been delays in the start of the event, but it has finally gotten underway. Take us into what the last couple of hours have been like in preparation for this.
Thank you so much, Oliver. Good evening to you. Good afternoon to you and our viewers at home. Yeah, the program has just started officially just a few minutes ago. We have seen performances from different artists over the past 2 to 3 hours. But what I can tell you that now that the people are already here, as I'm saying that the formal program has just started, we're expecting AMCU President Joseph Mathunjwa to deliver a keynote address this afternoon. But we are now focusing on the issue of, compensation, because it has been one of the major talking points, even 13 years since the Marikana Massacre. So earlier on we spoke to the lawyer who is representing those mine workers who were wounded and arrested during the Marikana Massacre. But now I want to bring onto the conversation the lawyer who represents the families of the deceased, including widows. His name is Azenati Tukela, who's going to speak to us about the claims that they have lodged so far and where is that matter currently. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon on SABC News for Azenati. Just talk to us about the number of claims that you have lodged, the legal battles that are currently, unfolding in courts with regard to the compensation.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. So we, as you had mentioned, we act for the 36 families of the mine workers who were killed on 13 and 16 August 2012. In 2015, just after the conclusion of the Falam Commission, we brought on behalf of those families a civil claim against the Minister of Police, in which we were claiming for 5 main claims, one of those being loss of support, which I will expand on quickly. Just after the launching of the claim, the state called all the parties into a joint roundtable session to discuss settlement of these claims. And I mentioned loss of support because out of the 5 claims, being loss of support, general damages for psychiatric injury, pain and suffering, trauma and emotional support, constitutional damages for the loss of spousal care and spousal support, constitutional damages for the loss of parental care. Out of all those claims, the state was willing to settle only on the loss of support component, which, as you would assume, it is an easy discussion because it is easy to compute and quantify it down to an amount. So of the 36 families, 34 families were compensated only on the loss of support component. And then what now remains outstanding is the general damages, the actual pain and suffering, the traumatic experience caused by Marikana, the psychiatric injury caused by Marikana, and the constitutional damages, of course, for the loss of parental care and spousal support. And the real difficulty there is that the state is simply refusing to acknowledge that Marikana caused pain, Marikana caused psychiatric injury, and Marikana caused trauma and emotional suffering for the widows, for the children, and for the loved ones who saw and were witnesses to a massacre of their loved ones on live television. So we are now at a point where we've given up on the settlement negotiations with the state because they simply refuse to acknowledge and recognize that Marikana caused pain, and it caused suffering, it caused emotional trauma, it caused psychiatric injury. We have now brought the matter back to court for litigation as of 2 years ago. And as you understand, the litigation process is long and lengthy. We have been preparing that matter for court. A week ago, we were before a judge at the Pretoria High Court for compulsory mediation, according to the directives of court. And we will now be returning to court for pre-trial and to be allocated a date to begin with the lengthy trial. The real administrative difficulty is that because the state is refusing or is simply denying that there is pain caused by Marikana, we have to take all 320 claimants for psychiatric evaluation so that we can have psychiatric reports proving the state and the extent of the psychiatric injury and the trauma and the suffering that they have suffered as a result of Marikana. But that is just one component of the justice process, because there's also the criminal process, which we contend strongly that the NPA is failing to bring prosecutions for the 16th of August. The 34 mine workers who were killed on 16 August 2012, there hasn't been single prosecutions brought to court. No one has answered to those crimes, and we still contend strongly that the NPA is failing on that aspect.
I want us to stay with the civil claims for a bit. You said there was only one settlement, and you have also taken other matters to court to ensure that families are compensated with regards to that. So how is the families coping in all of this as these matters are unfolding, whether in courts or negotiations are underway between the two parties or between parties that are involved on these issues?
No, it's a hard and difficult experience for the families because they understand what the case is about and how it is unfolding, and they understand that the compensation they have been provided is simply for the loss of support component of the claim. But the part that's really important to them being what Marikana caused them and what caused to them and what it made them feel, the psychiatric injury caused to them by Marikana, which they are still dealing with the consequences on a day-to-day basis, the pain and the suffering, the trauma, the grief and the emotional injury. All of that, they understand what the state's position, and it's a difficult experience for them that they have to deal with the denial of that pain, the denial of that psychiatric injury, the denial of that trauma and that grief for them. So despite how difficult it is, I mean, the widows and the families are strong. They are standing with the legal team, and they understand the solidarity and the support that they receive, not only from the stakeholders of Marikana, but from the greater nation. So as difficult as the process is, they still stand strong and very rigid in pushing and ensuring that eventually they reach a point where there is civil and compensatory justice for the atrocities caused on them.
Thank you very much. That's Azenati Tugela talking to us about, where they are so far with regard to the civil claims that were lodged by the families of the deceased mine workers, saying that there was one settlement, so other matters have been taken to court to ensure that the families are compensated.